Stand Up with Pete Dominick. On Indy, Sirius XM 104.
All right, hour 2 of the conversation. No matter how you're listening to it, we really appreciate it. And thanks for spreading the word about the conversation as well. You can listen, from those of you listening on demand, I love you. Of course, on the repeat, thank you very much. And if you're listening live, you can always give us a phone call to be a part of the conversation, 866-994-6343. Important issues that impact your life, your community, your planet every day. And last week, Alfred and I went down to Washington, D.C. We went to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. We got so much more audio that I want to play for you. Hopefully this doesn't seem no longer relevant, because it's very, very relevant. Everything that we're sharing with you is extremely relevant, and we're playing it partially to start a conversation. Of course, we want to make you think. We want to hear what you have to think. We want to hear you be a part of the conversation anytime. And we met a couple of people we met a lot of people who actually didn't have, quote unquote, traditionally held conservative beliefs, or at least they thought they did. And both the conversations I'm going to play for you now, the folks that were arguing from a conservative point of view against the death penalty and for marijuana legalization. And I thought they were both really interesting, really provocative, and frankly, very convincing. But I'm a bit biased. So first, I'm going to play for you from the organization called Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty at CPAC, my conversation with Marc Hyden. Let's listen to the conservative argument against capital punishment right now. All right, welcome back here at CPAC, and I'm now with the advocacy coordinator for an organization called Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty. And they're online at conservativesconcerned.org if you want to follow along. Marc Hyden, welcome to the conversation. Thanks so much for stopping by here.
I appreciate you having me. We're actually having great success here at CPAC. This is our second one. We've only been around for a year, but we've been well received and welcomed with open arms by many conservatives.
Before you tell me about your success, tell me about your organization and your cause. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not a commonly held conservative principle to be against the death penalty.
Well, we are a national network of conservatives and some libertarians that believe the death penalty is inconsistent with many of our principles. It runs against pro-life policies, fiscal responsibility, and limited government. So it runs against a lot of the principles that we hold dear. So you're seeing more and more conservatives actually coming out against the death penalty. Most recently, Dr. Ron Paul endorsed our goals.
Is that so?
Yes.
Well, that's a pretty big endorsement, especially with young folks. Okay, I want you to make your case. You don't have to make it to me, because I wouldn't kill. I don't think I would allow the person who killed my own child to be put on. But of course, that's a hypothetical. I may do it myself. But that's a horrific thing to even think about. But we don't talk about it nearly enough on the program. It is obviously a divisive and contentious issue, mainly in America in terms of the developed countries. But make your conservative case here. And let's start with the pro-life argument. How is being against the death penalty pro-life?
Well, all conservatives are pro-life, or at least all the ones that I've ever come across. But the death penalty program in the United States has wrongly convicted over 140 individuals since 1973, and many others. Those are just the ones we caught. Many others have actually been executed when there was serious doubt regarding the veracity of their verdict. So when the government kills an innocent person, they become no better than the offenders that they're trying to execute. And there's nothing pro-life about an innocent person being murdered by the government.
Okay, but the argument is from pro-life, and I'll correct you, not all conservatives are pro-life. Lots are, obviously. But, I try not to generalize too much here, Marc. But you're right. There's obviously that is a commonly held belief amongst folks who identify as conservative. But a lot of those folks will argue, I'm pro-life for the innocent. Once you commit a crime, when you've made choices, that goes out the door. What do you say to that argument?
I'm pro-potentially innocent life. And, we make so many mistakes. This is the same government I don't trust to properly deliver a piece of mail or efficiently run the DMV, and they make mistakes when with regards to innocence. And we've seen that problem. So we do run the risk of killing an innocent person because many people are wrongly convicted.
And what about the fiscal argument? How do you make the fiscal argument from the conservative point of view that is against the death penalty?
Well, if you talk to anybody here at CPAC and ask them if they support fiscal responsibility and restraint, they're all going to say yes. But study after study has shown the death penalty far more expensive than life without parole on every level of the process, starting with pretrial motions all the way to housing.
I mean, you say study after study. I would imagine there's almost never been a case where, how am I saying it? You'll correct me here, but where spending 10 years, 20 years on death row, because there's so many appeals, the appeals process is obviously so long, ever saves any money. I mean, it's not like anybody ever goes to prison. Do you know the closest conviction time for someone being convicted and sentenced to death, and how quickly they were actually put to death? I mean, what's the shortest that time period ever was?
The shortest, I can't tell you the shortest off the top of my head.
But it's never tomorrow.
It is almost always a decades-long process.
What are the costs with keeping someone on death row?
Depends on the state, but it can be up to 10 to 20 times more than life without parole.
Because it's people don't realize it, but a lot of it is the legal fees and the court fees and the taxpayers that have to pay for that stuff, because they're usually guys on death row aren't paying for all that themselves, right?
Most of the costs are actually in the initial trial, because it's many times longer with more motions, more specialists,
right.
a mountain of legal fees. Then you've got decades of litigation in the appeals process.
Not to mention room and board.
Yeah.
And healthcare.
Well, actually, and house them on death row is more expensive than in a maximum security prison in
right.
general population.
I saw you made the pro-life argument. You made the fiscal conservative argument. What's the other argument from a conservative point of view, or there's more, that guys like you in an organization like yours, conservatives concerned about the death penalty? We're talking to their advocacy coordinator, Marc Hyden. What else do you got?
Well, there's no shortage, but we've seen recent studies show that the death penalty does not deter crime. So if it risks innocent life and doesn't deter crime, what are we doing with this program?
Right.
The chances of someone getting the death penalty, about 1 out of every 100 murders receive a death sentence, and even fewer than that get put to death, and that's decades afterwards. What on earth is going to make a murderer stop and think there is a 0.5% chance that I may get the death penalty? It's not going to deter crime.
So you yourself and your organization is staunchly conservative on almost every other issue?
We are single issue, but I'm a very conservative guy. I worked for the NRA before this.
So you say the first thing you said was you launched right into your spiel of we're changing, hearts and minds here and bringing more conservatives to our point of view. How do you know that? How do you prove that?
Jay Sekulow is one of our supporters. Brent Bozell has been speaking out and been helping us out. Richard Viguerie, known as the funding father of American conservatism. We formed a strategic partnership with the Young Americans for Liberty because these guys, for many reasons, whether it's a religious issue or limited government, giving the government the power to kill U.S. citizens, it's not exactly limited government.
I cannot argue with. I'm trying very hard. And I'm a very progressive guy, so of course I want to talk to a guy like you who is changing minds of conservatives to clearly a more progressively held belief. I think it's fair to say, right? But I mean, have you been able? Are you a lobbyist? Do you guys lobby the federal government or state governments to try to have them change their laws?
We'd like to see it change on a state-by-state legislative basis. I think that's a conservative thing to do it on the local level.
Have you been able to make any progress on that?
A lot of red states are actually starting their own local groups, and many states are pretty close. Nebraska almost repealed it, but 2 senators filibustered, and they were 1 vote away from beating the filibuster to repeal the death penalty. A lot of other red states are working that direction.
Well, if I believed in God, if I believed in her, I would say you're doing God's work, Mark. See what I did there? But I think I love what you guys are doing, and I wish you the best of luck, and we'll have you back on live so you can take calls and argue with people.
I'd love
to hear you debate people who disagree with you, because I think you get a lot of great arguments, and we're shaking hands on the radio. Marc Hyden, it's conservativesconcerned.org, and if you want to follow him on Twitter, it's at CCATDP. CCATDP. Marc Hyden, nice to meet you. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Important issues, unimportant host. Stand Up with Pete Dominick.